Chair, I can confirm you are live on YouTube.
Thank you, Lauren. As we actually don't have a chair at the moment, can I invite nominations for a chair, please?
Could I propose Councillor Norfolk, please?
Is there a seconder? Councillor Bubb. Is that agreed? Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you, and I do enjoy these meetings, and also what I do enjoy also is attending the joint museums meetings which are held at county, and these minutes are presented to county joint museums as well. So thank you very much. So our next item on the agenda is the appointment of vice chair for the municipal year 22 to 23. Councillor Horsburgh was our vice chairman last time. I'd like to nominate Councillor Horsburgh if he's still willing to stand.
I'm happy to stand. When it comes to Zoom, you know, I just can't.
Well, hopefully we don't need Zoom meetings any longer. Okay, but I know you attend a meeting before the joint museums at county, so you know, it'd be quite convenient if for some reason I'm not able to attend. So is there a seconder, please? Seconder for Councillor Horsburgh, yes. Councillor Bambridge. Agreed, everyone? Agreed? Yes? Yes, everyone agreed. So good afternoon, everyone. Can I thank everyone for attending, and just to remind you, this meeting is being Zoomed live and it's being recorded. So, and also to remind you to use your microphones before you speak. So could I ask Sam to take those who are present, please?
Councillor Bubb.
Present.
Councillor Dwally.
Present.
Councillor Kemp.
Present.
Councillor Knockholes.
Present.
Councillor Bambridge.
Present.
Councillor Horsburgh. We don't have Councillors Daubney or Dawson, Chair. And I was going to move straight on to the apologies.
Yes,
we have
please.
apologies from Councillor Andy Tyler and also from Philip Eek.
Yes, thank you. And very often Lindsay from Trues is unable to attend, so I will offer her apologies because I know in the past she has offered them. And could I welcome our officers to the meetings with Robin Handley and Oliver Bone and Rachel Williams. Thank you very much.
I'm just thinking, maybe like I'm in the same position. It was in my mind it was going to start at 2:15, so maybe we'll.
Well, the agenda clearly says 2 o'clock.
It's still sort of fixed in mind.
Yes, I know,
Yeah.
but other members are here.
Chairman, it did say in the minutes that the next meeting would be at 2:15, although
It does.
of course it did say 2 o'clock at the top, so maybe.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I'm aware of that, yes. But obviously we've noticed the change in time. Okay then, so hopefully you have got your agendas up on your iPads, and we'll go on to the minutes, which was held a long time ago on the 14th of February. Are you happy for me to sign them as a correct record? Yes. Any matters arising which isn't on the agenda? I've been through them. I don't think there's any matters which is different from the agenda. No. Any declarations of interest, please? None. Okay then, so let's go to the important part of our meeting, and that is the report from Assistant Head of Museums, which starts on pages 10. I'll just remind members that we'll do each little headed paragraph, and then I'll ask you if you've got any comments or questions to ask. And the reason we've got this meeting is because we have a very detailed service level agreement with County Council and the Joint Museums meeting. Okay, so Robin, are you taking that?
Thank you, Chair.
So myself, Robin Hanley, Assistant Head of Museums, Oliver Brown, Curator of the Lynn Museum, and Rachel Williams from Stories of Lynn will be presenting
Just
different
one minute,
aspects.
someone else is online, I'm not sure who it is. Yes, Councillor Kybrid. Good afternoon, Councillor Kybrid. Is he? Good afternoon, Councillor Kybrid. Just to make members aware, you are the Deputy Chairman of the Joint Museums meeting. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. So, so Robin Hanley, Assistant Head of Museums, and I'll be joined in giving this report by Oliver Bone, Curator of King's Lynn Museums and Ancient House Museum, Thetford, and Rachel Williams, to a number of the sections, but very happy to deal with any questions at the end of each section, as the Chair referenced. So first section, obviously, and all of this report relates to the period February to May 2022. The first section really gives members an update on where we are as a service in terms of our COVID recovery as we come out of the pandemic. And section 1.1 just sort of gives members the headlines in terms of how, as a service, we are continuing to maintain sensible controls for the benefit of both staff and visitors, but also looking to get to a point where we can normalise our activities as quickly as possible. As members will be aware, if they visited any of our sites, you'll still see the hand sanitisers, the directional information, the encouragement of visitors to respectfully distance. We're no longer requiring visitors to pre-book, but that does remain an option, particularly at busier times. And the vast majority of our visitors are now coming on a walk-in basis. And in terms of site capacity limits, we've largely gone back to pre-pandemic levels. I think it's fair to say, as a service and looking across the sector sort of nationally, we're still not back to normal in terms of patterns of visiting behaviour. I think we are still seeing a reluctance on certain parts of our traditional audience to visit indoor spaces. And I think over the next few months, we'll get a better picture for how that recovery is looking, as particularly we go into the school summer holiday period. But I don't think we're quite back to 100% yet, but we're obviously doing everything we can to restore our programmes, activities and visitor numbers as quickly as possible. I'd also like to draw members' attention to section 1.3. One of the ways in which we've been improving our offer, both for visitors and staff, and indeed latterly for volunteers, is through the use of CO2 monitoring, which we've implemented over the past several months across the Norfolk Museum Service estate. And we have CO2 monitors now operating in priority areas, whether that's public areas or back office spaces. And this is particularly helpful, mindful that normally museums don't tend to have windows and doors open for security reasons and environmental reasons. And many of our back office spaces, particularly, including our stores, have very limited ventilation. So some of those issues have presented real challenges for us during the period of the pandemic, mindful that pretty much every building we occupy across the service, including here in King's Lynn, are historic buildings that don't naturally lend themselves to some of the COVID controls we would like to introduce. So we had to put in quite strict limits on occupancy levels, which did affect our ability to make the most of spaces, whether it's in terms of staff occupancy or indeed volunteers. And the way to sort of get a grip of that has been through using CO2 monitors, which give us accurate data in terms of what's going on within individual spaces. We've rolled these out across Norfolk Museum Service, working with the County Council's corporate property team. And not only are those units now providing room level surety for staff and volunteers, because you can see what's happening on the monitor, but we are also able to look at the data across the service, because all those monitors plug into the LoRaWAN local area network, which means we can monitor live and historic data to look at trends. And what that has meant is that for spaces like the office in Lynn Museum, whereas during the pandemic we had a limit of 1 member of staff, because we've been able to look at that space over a period now, with additional controls, we can have 3 or 4 members of staff using that space. Likewise, areas that we use for schools, again, service-wide, we've been able to increase capacities. And also, and this is really important, this data is helping us to bring volunteers back to indoor areas. We know how important volunteering is to the operation of the service. We also know the value that's placed on volunteering by those that give their time to us, whether it's through a subject interest or for sort of well-being purposes. So we've been very keen to get volunteering back as soon as practicable. And this CO2 monitoring has given us the tool to do that job. So that's a significant step forward. And we're continuing to use that approach to help us get back to a sort of more normal mode of operations, certainly in terms of staff and volunteers. So I think, Chair, that's probably all I wanted to say in that first section. Any questions?
Councillor Bubb.
Thank you. You've been increasing the cleaning. You've presumably had less people through, but you've been opening up the ventilation more. So is this a plus or a minus for the exhibits that aren't locked in a glass case?
So one of the sort of balances we've had to make throughout the pandemic is looking at the requirements around ventilation against what we would normally do in terms of maintaining stable environments. And obviously, one of the reasons we don't open doors and windows is around the environmental impact that has on top of issues like security. So at a lot of our sites, we've not been able to sort of introduce sort of natural ventilation in the way that other buildings might have done, which has then, restricted our ability to open certain spaces across Norfolk Museum Service. It's been less of an issue at Lynn Museum because of the nature of that building, because as a former chapel, it's got big open spaces, but it has affected other areas that we use, both in King's Lynn, stores like Aikman's Yard, and other sites around the service. And we work closely with our conservation team, where we are having to make improvements to ventilation to ensure we're not then compromising impact on the environment. Something we have seen as a service, and this is not unique to Norfolk Museum Service by any means, is because of the lockdowns, we have seen an increase in pest infestation. And that's because over extended months, although we had checks going on at buildings and collections, including here in King's Lynn, the lack of air movement, the lack of sort of staff and visitors being around did mean that in some areas we have seen an increase in pest infestations, which our collections management team have then been having to manage quite carefully. And that, I think, is one of the sort of legacies of the pandemic. And we're fortunate in Norfolk Museum Service in having a really professional conservation and collections management team who've been working their way around the service, looking at impacts of pest. And we do also have in our main collection centre at Gresson Hall walk-in freezer, so any collections that are affected can be frozen in-house. But you're absolutely a good question, because managing environments at a time when you're trying to increase ventilation and respond to the pandemic has been quite challenging. But we have sort of worked our way through it, I think, without compromising collections.
I'd like to ask a question about the volunteers. We used to have quite a few volunteers taking photographs of old paintings and etc. upstairs in a very small room. What's happening to, are they doing that elsewhere, or haven't they not started yet?
Thank you, Chair. We're working with our colleagues at Norwich around rebooting the volunteer team at Lynn Museum. We need to have a sort of a safe space for them to work. We have, during the lockdown periods, worked with people on remote volunteering and doing descriptions of the paintings and objects we have had on display, and that's a useful extra thing that we were able to use for helping provide access to those pictures for people who perhaps can't see so well, visually impaired people. So it's sort of work in progress, really, for getting the team back.
Thank you.
And Chair, just on that topic, as a service, we took the end of the school Easter holidays as the point to look at bringing more of our indoor volunteers back. We had already brought some indoor volunteers back, particularly those in direct delivery supporting schools and some of the visitor programs. But in terms of some of those collections-based volunteers, particularly who often worked in stores and confined spaces, we're taking a phased approach to that, but we have agreed the sort of principles of that across the service, and the volunteer coordinator, Michelle Gaskin, who's based in Norwich and supports colleagues such as Oliver and Dana, is very active in helping that. But I think there, we will need to be recruiting some new volunteers, but also bringing back as soon as possible those volunteers who we know are desperate to get back and work with us.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kemp?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I note that the service has been helping with the Guildhall Project in the Towns Fund, and that's very good news. And you've been working on the interpretation strategy and also the learning engagement. I know that there's going to be an event plan a day for young people. Could you expand on the work you're doing?
Sorry to disturb
Yes.
you, but can we ask those questions when we get to that part of the agenda?
Absolutely, yes. I
Do you
thought it
mind?
was on the whole report.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No,
Thank
that's
you,
fine.
Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, everyone. We'll now go over to Oliver Byrne on item 2 of the agenda. And as you can see, the very popular Growing Stories exhibition is the last day today, wasn't it? Or Saturday was the last day.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this next bit of the report considers exhibitions at the museum. And yesterday, actually, in the summer months, we opened Lynn Museum on a Sunday afternoon. So yesterday was the last day of the Gardens exhibition that we've had since last October. And it's gone down very well. We've taken opportunity to change things around. There's a shop display at that far end of the Lynn Museum, and we've made that into a recreation or display about the seed shop, the tailor's seed shop that was in the town. And in the report, I've got some photographs that connect with that part of the town's heritage. And the two twins, Jim and Bob Taylor, who featured in the photograph with the weighing machine, with the seed machine there, with their father, have been very supportive, and they come in. I think our visitor numbers have been boosted by them coming into the museum quite a lot to see the exhibition there. So I wanted to make the point that things like the embroidery that that I show in the report as photograph of lovely objects, it's an opportunity for us to display textile items that can't go on permanent display because of the light damage that might be incurred. But something like this is a great opportunity for us to display items such as that from the collection. And towards the end of that little section, 2.1, we've got King's Lynn's very own swords to ploughshares objects, which is a recent gift to the museum of a trowel that was made from a bomb that dropped on the Eagle Hotel in King's Lynn. The worst of the fatalities were caused through that bomb, which took place. I was looking at this up on the train into work today. So it was June the 12th, 1942. So 80 years ago yesterday. And this is a lovely object, which perhaps is a hopeful object arising from such destruction. And is a recent acquisition to the museum, so we're very pleased to have it. And that's on display in the museum, well, was on display until yesterday.
Thank you. Go on to the exciting part.
So we're very excited to have the loan of this major painting by Turner. We think it's the first time that a Turner oil painting has been on display in public display in King's Lynn, and this will open to the public week on Friday. So we're changing the exhibitions around. This painting will come, we're working very closely with Dr. Francesca Vanka, who is Senior Curator for the Norfolk Museum Service, who worked hard to acquire this for the Norfolk Museum Service, and is the first Turner painting to come into public collections in Norfolk, Suffolk, and Essex, sort of east of England, isn't it? I think. So as well as the Turner painting, Walton Bridges, we're also going to have a selection of other paintings from the Norfolk collections, which explore the different moods of water and also the influence that Turner's had on other artists, including King's Lynn's Henry Baines, and one of the paintings by him of the Fisher fleet in the town will be on show as well. So very much looking forward to that. Then, oh, and I wanted to say actually that you're all very welcome to come and join us. We're having a drop-in afternoon a week on Thursday, which I think is the 23rd of June. And if you're available, then do come. We're opening up the doors for this exhibition there between 12:30 and 4:30, and I'll be around, and also Francesca will be there on that day to be able to talk with you and explain about the painting and the exhibition. So item 2.3 on the report is a forthcoming exhibition. So after we say goodbye to Turner and the other paintings, we'll be having our new exhibition, which features archaeological hoards from Northwest Norfolk. And these come, sort of the earliest ones will be from the Middle Bronze Age, right the way through to the English Civil War period. And this will be an opportunity in the report, but we'll also, there'll be a hoard of Roman glass on show, and also some Bronze Age hoards. There's a very interesting weaponry hoard found at Fincham that we're hoping to display as part of this as well.
Any questions? Yes? Walton Bridge.
It's on the Thames, so it's I think it's just in Surrey, and connects, of course, with our rivers here and bridges in Norfolk. But it's an example of you know, a wonderful work by this master of paintings.
No.
The Taylor's seed, is that the same family as Taylor's bulb, which is crossed in Lincolnshire? That's kind
of... that's a very good question. I'm not quite sure what the answer is, and there may be people in the room who know the answer better than me.
Yes, it's a local family that kept the shop in Norfolk Street, and the two brothers are still around, and they actually helped to fundraise at the Hansa Festival yesterday. So it's a local family, and their mother lived to the age of 90 something and lived in King Street. So it's
Are they
certainly a local
connected to
family.
the Taylor's Bulbs council?
Yes.
We don't know. Councillor Banbridge?
I don't know the answer. I know of the other Taylors because my brother living in Boston, he knew the other Taylors. I don't think they're connected, but the shop was where the side entrance of Marks and Spencer is. They sold out to Marks and Spencer. Yeah. Yes, the side, the bit in the top end of Norfolk Street.
Thank you.
And they often give lectures in the town, or town guides, evening, that sort of thing. Okay. Okay.
So final item on this section is we did a little display in the front of the museum highlighting medieval objects and connecting with the major projects at Norwich for the Norwich Castle Keep, Royal Palace Reborn, which Robin knows only too well because is sort of masterminding the work at the Keep.
Okay, can we continue? Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Oliver. The other museum developments?
So the first item here relates to our social media presence, and I've got a report here which can be circulated to members with the minutes, and it relates to activity at the Lynn Museum between 1st of December and 31st of May. And we have both Facebook and Twitter at the Lynn Museum. We've gained 157 new followers on these two key social media platforms, and we now have a combined following of 4,613 people. And the report shows how we've got a sort of variety of reactions, and our social media person has given sort of details about engagement rate and so on. And then the social media and digital highlights include the celebration of the loan of Seahenge to the British Museum's World of Stonehenge exhibition, with a campaign of weekly Seahenge Sundays. And some of you I know do follow us on social media, and thank you very much for doing that. There's a wonderful, I would point out, I mentioned it to Robin earlier, there's a wonderful little video that our museum assistant Hayley did about visiting the exhibition at the British Museum, which is a wonderful thing, going from King's Lynn all the way to London, seeing the exhibition and back. And it must have taken a whole day, but it was done in about sort of 40 seconds on the social media.
Is that on Twitter?
That's on Twitter,
Oh,
yeah.
I'll have
It's
to
really
look
good. It's
for
worth
that.
looking up.
Yeah.
And there's detail of other campaigns that the museum has been following as part of our social media work, which is largely done by the excellent team, the front of house team at Lynn Museum, and I'd like to thank them very much for all their work on that.
So many people rely on social media now for advertising, marketing, and so it's a very important aspect of promoting the museums and King's Lynn and marketing. So if you're not following, or if you do follow, please share so everyone, so that's how we get more followers. Any questions so far? Yes, Councillor Diwali.
Thank you, Chair. I might be a little bit premature, but seeing as we've mentioned the Seahenge exhibition, I did go and see it, I think, a couple of weeks back, just before I caught COVID. Anyway, it was an excellent exhibition, and the timbers are displayed absolutely brilliantly. It was well worth going to see. 2 points. One is, I think you mentioned a little bit further on 4.4, and so if we haven't got there yet, is the film and audio that was specially commissioned. Is that something that will be made available to Lynn Museum? And the second question is that I forget the words, interpretation boards up at the British Museum said that it was on long-term loan to Norfolk Museum Service from the Lestrange estate. And from my perspective, this was a golden opportunity to give Lynn Museum a plug. And perhaps it would be nice to have seen a mention of Lynn Museum. Thank you.
Yes, we have been working with Rose Ferraby, who's the artist I mentioned in the report, and who's put together the film, which I think is really good and includes interviews with people much involved in the story of the discovery, excavation and display of Seahenge. And she is coming to visit us, and we're going to be discussing the sort of the legacy after the exhibition and how we might be able to incorporate some of her work into what we do at the museum. And we're also planning to go and visit the museum again to meet with Neil Wilkin, who's the curator at the museum, of this particular exhibition, and we'll be working with him on this as well. As I mentioned earlier, the catalogue that comes with the exhibition does also feature Seahenge and acknowledgement to Lynn Museum as part of what's written there.
Thank you. Yes, I couldn't resist a copy of the catalogue, and if anyone wants to inspect it, I've got a copy here that they may be more than welcome to have a look at.
That's good. Thank you. Okay, then. So we're discussing the Seahenge and the Stonehenge exhibition. Councillor Camp, you've got some questions.
Yes, I wanted to say at 3.4, Kick the Dust project, the funding. How is the funding set up beyond October? Because I understand that there were some reconfigurations of financing, because it's a tremendous project and nearly half of it's delivered in West Norfolk. So what's happening with that, please?
Robin will answer that when Rachel give her her presentation as well, because that's all encompassed within each other, Kick the Dust and finance. Okay. We're jumping a bit. So have we got anything else on the Seahenge and Stonehenge exhibition, Oliver?
Just to say, it finishes on the 17th of July. So if you plan to go, do go. As has been said, it's a fantastic exhibition, very impressive, and it's a sort of once in a lifetime opportunity to go and see it. So there's fantastic objects on display there.
You do have to book ahead, don't you?
You do need to book ahead, and yes, I would thoroughly recommend it. When the exhibition closes, our colleagues will be much involved in the sort of the pack up at the other end, as it were, and their safe return to King's Lynn. So that will be taking place later in the summer. And just to sort of reiterate, it's had fantastic reviews as well. So all over the newspapers when it opened earlier in the year.
And it'll be quite important to know whether in the future whether people have visited Lynn Museum because of what they've seen in the British Museum during the summer. So we'll have to keep we'll keep an eye on the numbers attending in any case. So it'd be good to know. That will bring more people to King's Lynn. So our next item is number 5 of the Friends of the King's Lynn Museum. The past chairman of the Friends did contact me several times because she's quite disappointed that the committee couldn't find any new members wanting either joining the Friends or wanting to become chairman, secretary, etc. And I know Oliver and Robin's tried very hard to secure the Friends of the Museums, but it hasn't been feasible, unfortunately. It's a difficult one to try and encourage people to be on a committee raising funds, and they have played a very important part in King's Lynn Museums, raising funds and help to purchase articles and artifacts for the Lynn Museum. So I'd just like to put in the minutes that it's disappointing that no new members couldn't be found to form a committee, but we do realise they've all worked very, very hard indeed. And it's been really good to have the committee on board and members of the Lynn Museum on board, Friends of the Museum on board to raise funds for the museum.
Yes, I would like to say that obviously it's very sad that the Museums Friends organisation is considering winding up and probably will do so. Is it possible for a project like Kick the Dust to take this on with the young people? It's not. Rachel's shaking her head. Why not, Rachel?
Right, one, sorry. I think from my experience with Kick the Dust, pinning down the same group of children, young people to continue a programme for a number of weeks, months and years would become too difficult. We would be trying to fix them into a group that it's at a time, Kick the Dust is at a time in their development, their career path that they wouldn't really be able to commit that amount of regular time. And I think we'd have a continuous turnover of people, which doesn't aid the consistency. And so my experience would be that would be unlikely to work, and it would end up being the adults who are supporting the young people running it. I think that probably wouldn't work too well. But
isn't it possible to isolate the various functions that the Friends of Lynn Museum have performed and sort of cut it up into bite-sized chunks, and then, if, for example, volunteering or stewarding, and sort of work through the existing projects? So sort of reimagine it. That used to be a very fashionable word, reimagine.
Could I ask Robin to answer that? Because Kick the Dust is about career development more so than actually volunteering, and also many of these young people will be moving on to either universities, colleges, or at work. So, Robin, would you like to add?
I just think it would be good to have it as a flexible sort of moving kind of project, so that, you know, whatever was provided in a new way by people who dip in and out, because obviously volunteers come and go all the while anyway. It's just a thought. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we absolutely sort of, you know, echo the concerns around that sort of valuable capacity the Friends bring. And at the end of the day, they're an independent charitable organisation. And as the chair said, you know, Oliver particularly has worked really hard to try and find an alternative to dissolution. But at the end of the day, you know, they are an independent organisation and came with regret to that view. And I think there are functions that the Friends serve that absolutely, Councillor Kemp is right, can be sort of disaggregated. They have historically provided a source of volunteers, and often there's a sort of read across between volunteers and Friends. And as we said earlier, we are looking to sort of extend opportunities for volunteering. So there will still be those, you know, various chances for local people to get actively involved in the life of the museum. So that's something we're absolutely committed to do. And that's something that Oliver will work on with our volunteer coordinator. So we have some support to help with that. Fundraising has historically been an important role for the Friends, and they have been able to apply to funding bodies that, as a local authority, Norfolk Museum Service wasn't able to do. We do now benefit from the Norfolk Museums Development Foundation. And part of that organisation's remit is to help with supporting fundraising. And again, because that's an independent trust, it is able to apply to the same sources of funding that the Museum Friends have previously applied to, and Oliver has been and spoken to the Norfolk Museum Development Foundation about other projects. So in terms of that important fundraising element, whether it's, you know, local staff contacts through members such as yourselves, maintaining that awareness of what's available here in King's Lynn, in terms of some of those bigger programs, that's where we think the Norfolk Museum Development Foundation will absolutely have a role. So I think it is, you know, it's a real shame that the Friends have come to that decision. And again, you know, testimony to Oliver for putting in a lot of effort to try and find an alternative outcome. But we're now looking at those elements like volunteering and fundraising, particularly to see how we can sort of find a sort of sustainable alternative.
Fordex.
Okay, so if we go on to partnerships, which, yes, sorry, Councillor Bev, I didn't see your hand up.
I've been aware of the Friends because I've been on this committee, etc. But was the person that just visits the museum ever aware such Friends existed? Was there anything as they left the museum to say, would you like to be a friend?
Yeah. Well, I'm fully aware there's a poster in the front, and there's also a donation box, which the donations in the box goes to the Friends of the Museum. And I understand they also promoted young people friend for the museum as well. That's a good question.
So absolutely, and I think you know, colleagues at Lynn Museum have done their best to sort of promote the Friends when the opportunity is there. As the chair said, that, you know, there is the donations box, and we have supported them on some of their quite creative programs like the Young Friends. So yeah, I think we've sort of done our best, but it's a real shame and a good question.
Okay, so partnerships, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this section really sort of updates members on some of the work that we're undertaking, particularly with colleagues in the Borough Council. As the Chair mentioned at the start of the meeting, as a joint service, we also operate under a service level agreement with the Borough Council, and as part of that, provide additional support for this building and the collections within it, including those exhibited in Stores of Lynn. And Oliver and his colleague Dana Woolbright provide curatorial support. And we're going to be hearing shortly from Rachel Williams around the learning engagement activity taking place here in the town hall. And under 6.4, a reminder that Rachel's post is part funded by the Borough Council, and we're very grateful for the Borough Council for the support they give to Rachel, who has a role not only here in Stores of Lynn, but also across the borough. And Chair, if you were comfortable at this point, I'd like to introduce Rachel to give members an update on her activities.
Yes, certainly. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Rachel. I know you've had 2 extremely busy weekends. It's absolutely incredible the amount of young people who've been to you to do all sorts of projects in the last 2 weekends in the Kingston Square. So thank you very much. And they've been very, very popular, especially yesterday with the river and making junk boat models.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. It is a joy. I don't know if too many people would want to be doing what I do, but I enjoy it, so I'm very grateful.
Good to hear.
Thank you. So my report spans from the 1st of March and included part of June because of just having information hot off the press, but I'll start with schools. We've had 12 schools and 431 pupils in total on there. Numbers don't always seem very large on there, but as Robin has said, you know, we're moving back into schools, getting more bookings so that they can come out for visits. And so I'm really pleased about that. And we've got 7 further schools before the end of the term. So that will push up the numbers yet again. We're doing a lot of work with Lynn Museum, where we work collaboratively on a split site day, which gives us a chance to give different aspects of topics that are in common. Or as we're finding schools more, that perhaps the challenge financially of coming out with the hiring of a bus, they come and try and cover more than one aspect of their curriculum work. So we've had floods and flooding combined with the Hanseatic League, and so we've been doing 1953 floods at the same time as Hansa, but there is overlap within the content. I did the Hansa part, Lynn Museum did the 1953 floods, so that they're able to associate an area, a museum, with an aspect of that bit of the curriculum. So that's the way we get around it. We try not to mix it up too much because we do believe the children benefit from a coherent understanding of what's going on at that period of time they're studying. The Platinum Jubilee commemorative coins went out successfully. I was able to help with the distribution of those. And we're very grateful to all the borough councillors and to the mayor who was able to help us get those coins distributed. We know the schools have really appreciated a visit, and I know that many people managed to combine it with their special Jubilee events that were going on in schools, so thank you for that. The Cambrian School has come on my radar, and they work with a number of children with and young people with autism. And that's been really very popular this term. Only small groups coming with 1 or 2 staff, but it's been really lovely to be able to offer them some outings so that they can come and learn about their local history, which is proven very popular. And the College of West Anglia are also using us a lot. So they have foundation courses there, and being able to adapt the programme to suit them. And often we've included the escape room, quite a simple one, but even adults have got involved with it by virtue of needing to lower the challenge, but just, I'm not a very good escape room designer, but it's worked to keep those students locked in for about 10 minutes, and that's been a good time. So that's proven to be really good. And I combine that with understanding of roles in the museum service, so they understand how the displays have been put together. Any questions on the schools?
Councillor
Just like to ask, Cambrian School, where's that?
Over at Wisbeach area. Yeah, Wisbeach.
It's not Wales.
Pardon?
It's not Wales then.
It's not Cumbria.
No, but that's what it's called.
What is a Cambrian School?
It's a special school for autistic students. Yeah, okay. No, well, to be honest, nor do I. But when they approached me to bring some small groups, I'm willing and happy to work with anybody who wants to come and benefit from it. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Diwali.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for the update on the Guildhall meanwhile use. One question is, I understand that there is intended to be a children's area in the revamp.
Stage of we want some people to come in.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
The broadband just dropped
Oh,
Looks okay.
Yeah, it's up and running again.
Okay.
brilliant. So if I can just move on to point 2 on my report about Kick the Dust. So
Back
just
to it.
rolling a little quicker through that. So my time turners are my regular group that have been running now for good 3 years, nearly 4. We've created a game with about the English Civil War that's corresponding to the archaeological dig that's happening at North Lynn. So we're involved with that. And David Flint is going to come and join in with the opening day when we launch those cards on Norfolk Day. So we're quite excited about that opportunity. They're also curating their own exhibition, the same group of young people. So they've been working with Dana Woolbright, who runs Time Turners with me, so that they can experience all the stages of putting an exhibition together, which is of their own choices. And that's been really, really good, including sending themselves a real egg to check that they can be trusted with artifacts being packed up. Not that we would send them anywhere, but it's just a nice challenge for them. We have got the work experience program continue to run really well. And on Thursday, we're premiering the History of Chapel Street film at the Corn Exchange Cinema, which will be lovely. Historic England commissioned through the Heritage Action Zone a film about the local history, and a group from the College of West Anglia on work experience with me took that on. I've got another work experience group who are currently curating an exhibition called Feast Your Eyes, all about medieval banquets. There was one stage where they wanted to run a banquet, a physical one, but luckily they realised the complexity of that and said we'd just go for an exhibition in it. So they giving young people the chance to design their own exhibitions and run their own projects is really powerful. But they do, we can trust them to have some common sense as well, which is lovely. Because we couldn't go into the school because of the levels. That's okay. Yeah, don't worry. So we went from being face-to-face to online, doing mosaics, and then into ceramics. So we would deliver the materials, then we would go online to work with the students. And it was, it's been lovely because I've been seeing some of them face-to-face now, and I didn't know what they looked like because we couldn't see them on camera. But they've come back now to do face-to-face work experience. This current group are going to be doing the Jubilee Challenge, Platinum Jubilee Challenge, with 4 parts to that challenge, including planting roses in the Mayor's Garden with the Open Spaces team. And I do find the Borough Council staff are really keen and supportive, as are NMS staff, but it's always lovely when I find people from the other people, funders for me, that are just as willing to work with me on any suggestion of project I've got. We've got a 4-week short programme was offered to the students that were on work experience to work with Collusion and helping with the manifesto project. So some of you may have seen that across the town. So that's Kick the Dust update. Really, we're still rolling on. Yep.
Councillor Kemp.
Yes, thank you for a very interesting report then, for all the work that you do for Kick the Dust. And with the move towards having summer activities, is the Guildhall going to be used for summer activities?
Yes.
And if so, how would that work and how would that be funded? And also about the continuity of the funding for Kick the Dust. I wonder if somebody could ask that question, please. Answer that question, please.
Okay. Should I do the Guildhall bit? So the Guildhall, because I was asked to do some meanwhile use activities while the decision and the funding applications are being processed, just to keep the building running. Dana Walbright and I had planned for 2 days of activities. One would be for families and trying to introduce them without it being overwhelming to some of Shakespeare's works, and very much a family approach to it, and making props and learning some lines, but getting involved in it on a lower level. Also experiencing the theatre. Another day in the week, so Thursdays has been put over to young people getting involved. So we'll do a play in a day style offering with up to 20 young people. One of those days is going to be for Norfolk Young Carers, because they asked us for some work, some activities for their young people, and one is going to be for students that you're aware of, for the leaving care students. Yeah. So that's how we're working. The time turners, who meet regularly on a Tuesday at 4 till 5:30, will be meeting in the theatre. Because it's a lovely opportunity and it's a group that we know very well, we thought it would be a good way to bring young people that we already are familiar with and know what they're interested in and how they work, to try new activities, which perhaps we could be a little bit more daring with what we offer to them, because we know them well and know their needs and requirements. So that was what we're asked for. And the funding, you asked about those projects, then there is a small amount of funds coming from the town deal board, because there was a release of about 5% that could be used for activities. So Dana and I have been given a budget to provide resources for those activities. A number of things we already have that we could use, like costumes and things from Stories of Lynn, that I already have in my group. I'd say my collection, that sounds a bit posh, but in my stock. So we'll be able to take those, which will of course keep the costs down. And we are paying with that money for the hire of the theatre. So we do have to contribute to that, because we wanted to make sure it was a fair hiring, not over subsidised budget.
Thank you. The funding of the project overall, because that's very important. I did actually bring a motion to the County Council's budget about this, because I think it's really important that the future of Kick the project, particularly in King's Lynn, it is secured for the long term.
Project, Councillor Kemp. I'll ask Robin Handley to reply to your question.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Kemp. As members will be aware, the Kick the Dust Norfolk project is principally funded through National History Heritage Fund, and the funding was originally due to extend until November of 2022. I'm pleased to report that funding's been extended now to the end of March 2023. So that is the result of a reprofiling with the Heritage Fund, which means we'll be maintaining the current sort of mode of delivery until the end of March 2023. As members may also be aware from previous meetings, we are continuing to look at other funding opportunities going forward, principally working with another Kick the Dust project based in Leicester, on another Heritage Fund project. We're at an advanced stage of discussions with that other partner, YMCA Leicester. They delivered the Y Heritage project, which was one of the other 12 Kick the Dust national programs. We've worked with them in a number of different projects over the years. But most recently, Rachel and other colleagues from the Kick the Dust team hosted a group of young people from YMCA Leicester who were visiting the county, had a number of days based here in Norfolk, met with not only our project workers, but also with a number of our young people. And that was a really useful way of testing new ways of working that could potentially extend into a new project, and we're shortly due to be talking with the National Tree Heritage Fund about the potential to submit a funding bid to them. So we are working hard on a successor Heritage Fund application. We also have some funding already in place, including, as I mentioned previously, the funding towards Rachel's Post generously provided by Borough Council of Kings Lynn and West Norfolk. And we are continuing to explore other opportunities with partners, including Children's Services within Norfolk County Council. We're also looking actively at opportunities within the next round of our Arts Council England funding, which is due to commence in April 2023. So the expectation is that we will have a mixed economy in terms of funding, but as members are aware, this has been a really successful project, and we are sort of very keen to maintain those benefits on a long-term basis. And we'll keep members obviously informed as those discussions go on.
Thank you. If I'm chair, I might observe this project needs to be put on a really permanent footing, because it acts like a youth service, doesn't it? And it seems to be so sad that you're having to scrap around for funds every few months. I think there needs to be a revamp of priorities, county and borough-wide, to make sure this project is given funding for the next 3 years. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Diwali.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me. May I come back on my earlier question, which was out of sequence, which I apologise, my mind tends to run ahead. If in the event, let me rephrase my question, in the event that you were invited for your Kick the Dust project and appropriate funding was made available, would you be willing to provide content? And I ask this because I've been impressed with the content that Kick the Dust has provided for other museum projects for the Guildhall, if asked. I think that would be the best way of putting it. Is that something you would be willing to explore? Thank you.
Is that personally, or is that for the team?
If I can just say, in terms, obviously the Guildhall project is a Borough Council-led project that we are supporting, and Rachel and Dana and others within Norfolk Museum Service have been providing advice and support to the Borough Council project team. And as referenced in the report, that includes help with a broad range of aspects of developing what is a very complex project. But colleagues such as Rachel have got very actively involved in advising around what may be possible with sort of things like youth engagement programs. And I think, as you say, what we've shown very successfully with Kick the Dust is that young people can be actively involved at all stages in developing a project, and actually can then ensure that what is produced is relevant to young people. I'm sure we'd be very keen to get actively involved, and I'm sure the Borough Council will be very keen just to get actively involved and use that experience, either in terms of the meanwhile use that Rachel's already discussed, or any sort of longer term delivery through the Guildhall. So I would be very surprised if the sort of Kick the Dust principles were not applied to whatever sort of programs were being developed and delivered through the Guildhall project.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I know Kick the Dust is a very challenging programme for a lot of these young people, but they still continue to attend the meetings which Rachel put forward, the dates, and I've been along to one or two of the afternoons, and they really enjoy it because it gives them a chance to actually think for themselves as well. They put their own projects forward, and in a way that's one reason why this Kick the Dust project is so important for them, because that gives them a chance to think and design. For instance, this game, they've also did a game many years ago, didn't they? The Egyptian game, board game.
Yeah.
So they see the end result, and that really inspires them to continue on. That's what's good about it.
There is a video that was put together by Creative Arts East and Festival Bridge Centre Film, who I think we showed it to you, didn't we? The young people were interviewed to ask why it was important that they were given youth voice and opportunities to speak. And it was an absolute dream to sit and listen to them. They were very eloquent, and they loved the opportunities. And it was really interesting that when the adults thought maybe they didn't want to attend the young people wouldn't want to attend the adult meeting, they said no, they really did want to be part of it. They didn't want to be sidelined because that was where they felt they could have the most impact. And I know 2 of them attended a conference, and they would have, they were nervous, they were anxious, but the feeling afterwards and the fact that people listened to them and they were heard was really vitally important to them. So we've learned a lot.
Okay, so
Thank you. Just quickly on sleepovers, we're still doing Stories at Stories. They're back, which is exciting. So we sleep down in the Undercroft, and I had my Brownies group back. They were one of the first ones I had originally, so that was lovely to see the leaders back. We've got another one planned for October, so those work really well, and the Borough Council staff here, the caretakers always support that work by providing something to sleep in, so we've got the alarms covered. Family learning activities are still going well. We did Easter holiday activities. I'm still running family bubble sessions, so these are pre-booked for groups of up to 4 children and 1 adult or 2 adults. We're continuing with those in the summer, partly because we just feel that it's easier for me to give them a really good, detailed learning session. I can adapt it to the people coming through the door, and it means that resources are more financially well balanced because I can buy what I actually specifically need for the groups that are coming in. I also provide something else so that if people do drop in, they've got a nice activity to do. So we try and cover it on all bases in that way. We did offer a Platinum Jubilee Day to co-run one with Lynn Museum, and that was well supported. And again, Open Spaces team worked alongside me, and the Borough Council graphics and print room are really helpful in supplying things as well for us. The Platinum Jubilee activities, we've been planning them a long time, and luckily the weather was in our favour, at least for Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And those went very well. With my Kick the Dust students helped me and some of the police cadets as well, so that was really good. And the activities are listed there. The children enjoyed it. I think they love the free play that they get with those creative activities. They're not too prescriptive, leaving them plenty of room to make something that they will remember for a very long time. It was very difficult to measure numbers because we were so busy, but I brought 280 mugs for them to decorate with their own design for a memorial, and all of those went by morning of Saturday. So that was a sort of measure for me that if I hadn't brought too many resources and they were all going, it must have been okay. Any questions? Did anybody have anything to say about the Platinum Jubilee?
That's a good event. It was an amazing event for people of all ages, not just the youngsters, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So all families became involved, which is good.
That's right. And then the Hansa Festival following hotly on its heels, again, went well. I'd used my holiday activities to paint the boats that were then used in the walking parade with all the flag carriers. And despite the wind, we managed to get most things created because the wind was blowing everything down the quay. And we just enjoyed doing that. Again, young people helping me to run those stalls. They're so much more confident now than they were. They've enjoyed being involved. And finally, the St George's meanwhile use plans. So you've heard that we're regularly running time turners there. Then we've got the Wednesday, Thursday activities. I can't do Monday, Tuesday there because I'm doing them here. So I'm still continuing the family activities here. Hopefully those will work well.
Yes, and this report will be sent out with the minutes as well, as we've just had it this afternoon. But as you can see, Rachel with the Lynn Museum is very busy with schools and other activities outside of school hours. So thank you very much, Rachel.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So would you like to continue, Robin, on to the Norfolk project?
Yeah, just
quick update on that.
just to finish off this section,
Yes.
Chair, just to remind members that in addition to all the sort of fantastic work that Rachel does here at Stories, Oliver's colleague Dana Wilbright also actively involved in supporting the exhibition programme, and in the paper you've got on page 18 an image of Dana and one of our trainees, Will, next to the Studio Ceramics display, which has been reinstated in the Stories exhibition area, and that's one of Dana's key roles, is ensuring the exhibitions here in the town hall remain refreshed and in good order. and Dr. Francesca Banca, who curated that show, which has previously been in Norwich and at Ancient House in Thetford, is our senior curator, who's also leading the Turner project. So it'll be Francesca back in Lynn to support the Turner exhibition installation. And it's a good example of the way in which the specialist curators, primarily based in Norwich, support the whole of the service, including Lynn Museum and here in the Town Hall.
And of course, that's another good project the Norfolk Museum Service has. It's the museum traineeship, which I believe is funded by the Arts Council. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair. So I can't remember what year of the Teaching Museum Pro. 2013, gosh, yeah. So it's been running for a very long time, and it's a real cornerstone of our Arts Council England, now National Portfolio Organisation business plan. But we do also supplement that with other funding. So Kick the Dust has funded Teaching Museum trainees, as have other projects, included those funded through the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And we've just welcomed the latest cohort of trainees, one of whom is based here in King's Lynn. And the King's Lynn Teaching Museum traineeship has been one of the longest running, if not the longest running. Normally each year the Teaching Museum traineeships get mixed up a bit in terms of where they're based, but because the role in King's Lynn shared with Ancient House provides such a broad range of opportunities, it's always made the cut in terms of traineeships for that year. So big credit for that to Oliver and colleagues in Lynn Museum. And it's a really good experience, and we've got a very good track record of trainees going on to secure jobs within the heritage sector, including within Norfolk Museum Service. And it also complements the other types of training we offer, including bursaries, shorter term bursaries funded through the Kick the Dust programme. So a good mixed economy of training, and all of it, as you said earlier, Chair, focused on developing skills and experience.
Good, thank you. Any further questions? No, sorry, yes?
Oh, yes, one of the other objectives is about working with care homes and people with dementia. Obviously, I appreciate during lockdown that wasn't possible. Is that kind of work starting up again, and what's the future for it, please?
So we have, as a service, as I'm sure Councillor Kemp's aware, done quite a number of projects working with dementia sufferers and their carers. That's included sort of work with care homes. A lot of that was interrupted during the pandemic, clearly. And we are beginning to resume some of that work across the service. But it's a bit like the sort of volunteering, it's going to be happening on a phased basis, I think, but it remains, clearly a very important commitment for the service to sort of get back to delivering those really important programs, not just for dementia sufferers, but also for carers as well, and carers more generally. And I know that's something very close to members' hearts. So absolutely, that always has been something that the service has been very committed to, and we're always alert to opportunities to develop that going forward.
Thank you. Okay, well, it's a very full report on the actual Norfolk project of Kick the Dust, and I know you've all had the agenda since the 1st of June. I think we've covered Kick the Dust quite well.
Just, Chair, if I may, just very quickly to provide an update on the key sort of participation numbers, because we've, since this report was prepared and published, we've had headline figures now supplied up to end of May. In fact, the 6th of June, 2022. So just for members' information, from the start of the project back in October 2018, there have now been 11,920 interventions involving 3,905 individual young people taking part in 6,063 hours of quality activity. And we're now seeing 82% of projects being led or designed by young people, and we've seen an increase in the number of young people playing an active role on the project steering group, including representing the youth board and as their role as of young ambassadors. And in West Norfolk, we've seen 47% of activities taking place, which represents over 1,200 individual opportunities. And since May, in the west of Norfolk, 56% of activities have been happening face-to-face, mindful that for some young people, actually, remote engagement remains a preference. So it's finding that sort of sensible balance in terms of face-to-face and digital, mindful of different needs of different young people. The other sort of, I guess, really telling statistic that always strikes me is the number of people who are young people who are reporting mental health issues, and that's currently running at 20% of project participants. This is obviously confidential and voluntary evaluation at the end of activities. But what I think it does is highlights the sort of impact the pandemic has had on young people and the value of projects like this in terms of providing different opportunities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And of course, these opportunities at their choice, which they don't have the choice at school, do they? So someone who have some problems, I think this is bound to hopefully help them. But it's impressive the amount of young people in the projects they've been able to participate in. It's really good news. Okay, sorry.
Do we know the 20% with mental health issues, are they from that 1,200 that have taken part in West Norfolk or across the county?
That would be a county-wide percentage, and we have seen that percentage increase, not surprisingly, during the pandemic. And Kick the Dust across the county was very active supporting Wellbeing Week, and is obviously very much looking at sort of wellbeing opportunities that are relevant, because it does seem to be, it's quite sad, isn't it? And it's one of the real legacies of the pandemic, I think.
Thank you.
Councillor Hawthorne.
Thank you, Chairman. Did you say 20% of what has a mental health issue? I say that because I'm governor of the Norfolk Mental Health.
Yeah, so 20% of young people responding to post-activity evaluation are reporting a mental health issue.
It's quite high.
It is quite high. I think it also reflects, I'm sure it reflects, mental health issues broadly within the population, but also mindful that a lot of the young people that Kick the Dust work with are from groups that are facing other challenges, including YMCA clients, young offenders, looked after children, care leavers, etc. So, you are working with a higher proportion of young people who might have other pressures that contribute to the sort of mental health.
Do you report back to any of the authorities? And that's quite a concern.
It is, and we have sort of fed those findings into colleagues, for example, within public health, within Norfolk County Council. I mean, obviously, it's part of their wider intelligence gathering, but we have shared those headline reports with colleagues in public health.
Louis Smith, for instance, who is our.
So, I'm sure it just adds to their information gathering around, what's going on within the wider population. But I don't think it's unique to this project. But it just sort of reminds us about the nature of the young people that this project is particularly working with. I mean, the project is open to all young people, but there has been a particular focus around, young people who have, other challenges in their lives, and the pandemic probably, puts a spotlight on those.
Figures still likely to go up.
Thank you. And of course, the education department, I think that's what you still call it at county, do you? Education, they have quite a good service there to help young people with mental health problems, which the schools can refer them.
And Chair, as mentioned in the report, we do work very closely with Children's Services and other sort of bodies within the County Council and more widely. And Christine Marsden, the Kick the Dust project coordinator, actually convenes a group that brings those organisations and services together. Christine Marsden. Yes, and if any members wanted any more specific information about Kit the Dust project, or wanted information on what's happening within their wards or divisions, then Christine would be happy to have individual conversations. I know she has done with a number of members already.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so we'll go on to the next item then, if anyone's got any further. Or should we have the attendance figures on?
Yes, so the attendance figures, as Robin mentioned at the beginning. The attendance figures, as Robin mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, have been affected by the pandemic, and people are sort of slowly coming back to museum visiting from our traditional audiences. The latest figures for April and May are 810 visitors in April, 818 in May, and these include some of the school children who come to visit, and Rachel mentions the split site days, which have worked very well, where people come to Lynn Museum and also to Stories of Lynn for their learning. So the year-to-date for April and May adds up to about 1628 in total for this 22-23 year so far. And I think, do we normally circulate the visitor numbers with the minutes, so that there'll be a chance for members to have a look at those in detail?
Yeah, they'll go out with the minutes. So is there a large difference between 2019 and 2022?
I think Robin dug out the figures from the previous years, so that we've got a sense of what that difference is.
So, as Oliver mentioned, we're still sort of, I think, in that recovery mode across the service. But in terms of Lynn Museum, if you look at the 2019 figure for April, it was 1,050, and this year it was 810.
Right, yes.
And for May, it was 1,063 compared to 818. So, and that sort of reflects broadly the pattern we're seeing across the service. I think we are seeing a good level of recovery within family audiences. I think it's fair to say there is still some reluctance, and as I mentioned at the start of the meeting, this is not unique to Norfolk, on the part of perhaps older museum visitors who are sort of more reluctant about visiting indoor attractions. And we are looking forward with interest, I think, to how the rest of the year shapes up. But I think whilst there's confidence about the summer, we need to see what happens as we go into the winter. But I think just to make members aware that we're not feeling that we're in a normal year still, and there's we need to build those audiences back, and the service as a whole is doing a lot to sort of make that happen.
It's quite promising though, isn't it, to think
it is. No, it absolutely is.
It's not horrendously low, is it?
No, it's not.
And of course,
it is heading
good.
the right
The
direction.
schools are actually attending in greater numbers, aren't they?
Absolutely right, Chair. And I mean, I think the general visitor numbers are heading in the right direction. They will continue to build, and we look forward with confidence to the impact of the really good programs we've got coming up here in Kings Lynn, with the Turner exhibition and all the activity programs and schools programs. So mindful that the offer has been quite limited because of COVID. As we sort of bring the offer back up to full strength, we would expect visitor numbers to follow. But I think we can expect to see some reluctance going through into the summer. What has been a real success, I think, as Rachel's already touched on, is around schools, and across the service we've seen a really good recovery of school visiting, and pretty much fully booked in the larger sites across the service. That was the case in the autumn term, the spring term, and into the summer term. And considering the pressures on schools just to open the doors, frankly, it's real testimony, I think, to the good relationship we have with schools, that they're so keen to come back. And they're knowing that if they do go to all the trouble of arranging a visit, they're going to get a really good quality experience and it's going to be managed safely. So it's it's a testimony to the work of Rachel and her colleagues across the service.
And those who are governors of schools, if you can remind them what we have at Lynn Museum and Stories of Lynn, it'd be good, and I'm sure you do. So that's a good time then to bring us to the next agenda item, which is the Tourism Department's report from Borough Council. And as I'm always aware that, and I always inform you that the reason I always ask for this report is because the museums is an important part of our tourism marketing in Kings Lynn and West Norfolk. So you have a report, and Philip Eek, tourism manager, gives his apologies because he's attending another meeting. And as you can see, the department is extremely busy. He's still promoting West Norfolk with paper brochures, but most of the information is on the Visit West Norfolk website, which has changed slightly. And I believe Philip's put in a date when the new website is up and running, which I believe is probably this week. There's mini guides for both Hunstanton and Downham Market. And I'm sure you're all aware of the Discover Kings Lynn map. And like me, you see many, many people around the town with this Discover Kings Lynn map. And in the Kings Lynn map, obviously it shows the museums for people to find their way around Kings Lynn. The Tourism Department also deals with Sail the Wash, which we promote, and hoping there'll be more and more boats visiting Kings Lynn. And the walking and cycling trails in West Norfolk on the website called Explore West Norfolk. Both are very good websites. And Hunstanton being the main coastal resort, we promote very well. And as you can see further on in the report, because we want West Norfolk to be an out of season tourism as well as in season, we've been working with County Council and their experience funding to bring Hunstanton Observatory to Hunstanton, which will promote people to come to West Norfolk during the winter months when we have more dark skies. And again, we're working with County with a sculpture on the Bowl Quay, which is part of 2 trials throughout Norfolk, bringing the whole of Norfolk together. The Tourism Department is also busy contacting businesses, informing them of all sorts of awards, funding opportunities, and ways we can help to promote their business as well. And on the back page, it shows you all the partnership working our Tourism Department works with. As you can see, we work not only with Visit Norfolk, but Visit East of England, which we give a small grant towards, and of course all that information then goes on Visit Britain. Do we have any questions, Councillor Bubb?
2 things. Are we noticing any effect from Springwatch being in the borough at the moment and over the last year? And 2, did we get involved in the Hansa Weekend website? Because when you clicked on the accommodation box, you only got the how to get here box.
You got
the how to get here box when you clicked on the accommodation one. So effectively, there was no accommodation on offer.
Okay, right. I'm not aware of the Hansa because I haven't been involved in the Hansa website. The Hansa committee is responsible for that. The Springwatch, I'm not sure. The thing is, it's difficult to know how many extra people actually visit West Norfolk. Our results actually come from surveys at the end of the main season, where Visit Norfolk actually survey businesses and ask them whether their accommodation numbers have increased. But I would have thought so. But also we encourage our residents to use our tourism businesses and our walking and cycling trails as well. So it's not just for visitors, it's for residents to make them aware of what's actually available in West Norfolk to enjoy.
Can I reverse the question then? Are we going to put as shown in Springwatch on our publicity?
I will ask the question.
Once Chris Packham realises we're northwest Norfolk, not northeast Norfolk.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Any other further questions? Thank you. Our next report is Truesyard Museum, and again, that's the reason for Truesyard to be on was it's a museum, an independent museum, and they also work with Lynn Museum, and we promote Truesyard Museum for tourism reasons as well. And would you say some of the schools actually visit Truesyard while they're visiting the stories of Lynn? Do you normally work together?
We do sometimes, yeah. We have done on a couple of occasions, but not as much. They get a number of good number of visitors there, but not as much. Part of we have different group sizes, and so sometimes it's harder to fit the program around taking perhaps a larger that can fit in this space into a smaller unit. But yeah, no, we're keen to do that. Definitely.
Good. Councillor Bob?
I know they've got a Friends. Are their Friends struggling like the museum is?
Well, they are, but there are trustees of Truesyard and also Friends. So those two groups work together, and because the trustees, being an independent museum, they have to have trustees of the museum. So they do work together and have functions. They've recently had one at Babylon Club, had a barbecue which the trustees set up, and then the Friends actually sell some tickets as well. So it's a larger group because of it being an independent museum, but they are struggling for members on the Friends, yes. As you can see, they have lots of events. They have funding from the Arts Council, other partnerships, and they also have tiny tots, they call True Tots, which they had funding from bags of help from Tesco's. So it's good news for the whole of town.
Just interested in 1.1, and that is created for a book on Vaughan Williams. Are we talking about Vaughan Williams, the composer?
Yes.
Well, it's quite interesting to know that one of our recent, and she's happy for me to say it, Borough Council and County Council was a goddaughter of Vaughan Williams.
Really?
She was a member of ours quite recently. And I asked her how she became goddaughter. She explained, and had a private ceremony in one of the Undercroft chapels of one of the well-known ecclesiastical buildings in London, where Rafe became godfather.
Yeah.
And that's quite interesting, the Lynn connection.
It's a good link, isn't it? And of course, Truesyard also works very closely with St. Nicholas's Chapel as well. Any questions? Oh, yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll see you on Wednesday. Okay, so the agenda item. Next is the next meeting on the 19th September. And it's 2 o'clock, okay for everybody? Yes, okay. Well, Wendy or Sam will know. Yes, we normally work around that if we can. No, yes. Okay, well, thank you very much, Sam, for taking the minutes. And thank you everyone for attending. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.